Hello there and welcome back to our channel. Bitcoin Bank, also known as Celsius, is collapsing. The Celsius cryptocurrency has lost approximately 80% of its value during a massive crash that has wiped out more than $400 billion from the crypto market. But before we continue, please don't forget to subscribe to our channel and hit the notification bell so that you don't miss our valuable crypto contents in the future. Well, what is Celsius? Why is it collapsing? And why don't they just convert it to Fahrenheit? In any case, Celsius is a place where you can deposit your cryptocurrencies in exchange for interest payments, and they'll give you loans and charge interest on those as well. Celsius says they're not a bank because banks are bad. Alex Mashinsky, CEO of Celsius Network, said, "Banks are not your friends, and we decided to create a replacement for the banking system, something that acts your best interest, a place where you can actually have your money work for you, not just work for your money." And basically 3 years since we launched the product, we've paid $1 billion back to the community. Nobody despises banks more than this person. It's obvious. Look at his shirt. He wears a shirt that reads, "Banks are not your friends." So how can his business, which offers loans and accepts deposits, be a bank? Strange, right? Mashinsky added that his company shouldn't be subject to banking and securities laws because cryptocurrencies are commodities. According to quote, banking and securities laws shouldn't apply to them. He compares it to a neighbor who borrows a cup of sugar and then returns with a cup and a tablespoon more in a fantastic article by Bloomberg. He shouldn't be subject to the standard rules. Why would you attempt to regulate this humble sugar lender? I can think of one reason though. Perhaps it has to do with the 25 billion sugar cups that Celsius is in charge of managing. Wait, I apologize for slight misunderstanding, but they are not lending out cups of sugar. Despite the fact that they are digital dollars, it is difficult to argue that lending regular dollars and lending digital dollars are not generally equivalent. I believe the majority of people would agree that they should be subject to the rules, especially in light of the fact that Celsius is currently collapsing and we are unsure of its future survival. Of course, this raises a question. Why is this collapse happening? It turns out that people have been concerned about Celsius's ability to reimburse customers for their withdrawals for the past few months, partially as a result of the absurd yields they were offering. For instance, if you deposited $1 at a bank, you would receive a small percentage of interest each year. On the other hand, Celsius is paying out 100 times the interest rate on the exact same deposit if you deposit $1 Tether or USDC there. They were paying 9% per year on your money, which is the same amount of money. In essence, how is that possible is the question. Is this offer unreasonably generous? And if so, when will it finally crumble? Mashinsky has told everyone that the offer is not too good to be true. In reality, the reason this is possible is that Celsius equals good and banks equal bad. According to him, the traditional financial system is taking advantage of people by taking their deposits, using them to generate income, and then claiming it can only offer extremely low interest rates. A lie is being told. The concept of Celsius isn't completely absurd, at least in theory. Banks do offer extremely low interest rates in relation to their earnings. Furthermore, Celsius charge fairly high interest rates for borrowing their cryptocurrency. They would charge 12% to borrow a stable coin, which is more than they were paying to deposit it. The fact that no bank or new age finance company can ever loan out 100% of what they have in deposits is the real issue. The reason is that you wouldn't have any money left over to cover withdrawals if you lent out every dollar you received. You are thus left with this kind of dilemma. On the other hand, you want to borrow as much money as you can in order to pay your depositors' interest. Lend too much creates a strange balancing act because you have to keep enough cash on hand to cover withdrawals, all of which is money you are earning interest on. You are losing money each month because you are unable to meet withdrawals on your loans. Perhaps to address this money issue, Celsius developed a proprietary cryptocurrency token called CEL that investors could purchase. Theoretically, this token was meant to lubricate the entire system, making it run smoothly like a precisely tuned engine. Whenever they needed it, it might offer liquidity. According to Mashinsky, they actually used the word wheel to describe the system, calling it the wheel of fortune that never stops. He claimed that this was Celsius's primary business strategy. Flywheel token economics is what he called it, like making loans, collecting interest, and giving them to borrowers, lending coins, collecting interest, purchasing Celsius, and giving it to its members. You see what I mean? Money always rises. Well, until it doesn't, that is, if you haven't already realized. In June, it's winter. The markets are all down and we are in a crypto winter. People begin to feel a little uneasy all of a sudden. Money doesn't simply increase, so some withdrawal symptoms start to appear. Everything seems fine at first. $1 billion reportedly left between March and May, according to Financial Times report. No big deal. But as time passed, Celsius's situation started to look a little shaky because suddenly everyone was comparing Celsius to Luna's May collapse, which was brought on by unsustainable yields, and you appear to be interpreting Celsius in the same way. As a result, the situation is getting worse and making things worse. They have a lot of deposits that are locked up. As an illustration, their Ethereum deposits were currently locked in ETH2. It gets a little complicated in this section of the story, but all you need to know right now is that they started taking out loans to cover withdrawals because they lacked enough liquidity. The crypto researcher Dirty Bubble Media provided evidence of this. He began to notice that major exchanges like FTX started sending $50 million in USDC to Celsius as he followed the cryptocurrency that was flowing into their wallets. He would then publish this for public viewing, and it kind of spiraled out of control. The more pressure there was on Celsius, the more loans he would take out or creative ways to cover withdrawal fees. However, once someone saw that and tweeted it, panic ensued because people believed that Celsius was unsupported. As a result, they would experience even more withdrawals, necessitating yet another loan application. I believe you get the idea, sort of the opposite of Mashinsky's flywheel. All of this eventually became too much for them to handle. Celsius halted all withdrawals, swaps, and transfers on June 12, 2022. Here, the goal is to see if they can recover some of the cryptocurrency that has been stored elsewhere. They can actually pay for withdrawals, and while I understand that it might have been necessary, this is comparable to the pilot of an airplane telling the passengers not to panic. However, he is stopping the engines for a moment. I mean, everyone would start to panic right away, and within an hour, the CEL token fell another 50%. Since any remaining CEL tokens are now even more worthless, this exacerbates the solvency problem. Not to mention, it's not certain that Celsius will have enough cash on hand to repay investors. In the meantime, people began to scurry around the terms and conditions. When they did so, they discovered something very unsettling. They discovered the bankruptcy clause in the centralized bank. If Celsius goes bankrupt, enters liquidation, or is otherwise unable to make its payments, take what it says to heart because that is not a bank. It's possible that eligible digital assets used for the earned services or as security for the borrow service won't be recoverable. So it turns out that the rules don't apply to them the same way when a bank that isn't a bank takes your money. When you are giving them your hard-earned cryptocurrency. I mean, didn't you get it? I don't mean to make light of this at all. but it was more like you lending them some sugar cubes. However, their stance is so obviously absurd. To be clear, my hope is for Celsius to survive the situation, not because they merit it, but rather because the investors who have their entire life savings trapped there deserve to keep their money. If there's one thing I learned while researching the story, it's how many people invest their entire life savings in it. Once more, this quotation is from a Bloomberg article that was used in a contest where participants shared their Celsius-related stories. Many claim to have given their entire life savings to Celsius. Well guys, this is rough. It makes me think a lot of the Luna incident, where people were just throwing outrageous sums of money at it. A funding round for Celsius was actually attended by a Canadian pension fund. Therefore, they are also exposed to this situation. For the sake of all of those people, I sincerely hope that Celsius is not insolvent as it appears to be, which is an odd thing to say about something that isn't a bank. Anyway, that's all about the updates on Celsius. I hope I was able to give clarity on this topic.